All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2022 Pick'em Baseball Over-Unders. We have a new addition to this year's broadcast. For the 3 or 4 people who've watched in the past, it has only been myself and David Brown. This year, the one and only Shane Sandersfeld, who's actually added some organization to the chaos of the Baseball Over and Unders. All these years we've been picking, Dave and I review it the next year, and then we forget about it 3 years later. But thanks to Shane, the last 2 years, we actually have records compiled. We have everything, and we've kept track of it. So welcome to both of you. Exciting baseball season on hand, and we're all ready to go. But just wanted to see how you guys are feeling going into the season.
I can tell you this much, that this to me is the equivalent of following a rock band for 10 years and they finally let you up on stage to sing a song. I mean, I don't know if there's been a bigger fan of the Steve and Dave podcast than myself, but to get on the Over-Unders edition is pretty much a dream come true, a top 5 accomplishment in my life. And it's just, I can't believe I'm sitting here with 2 great baseball minds.
Well, you see, the problem that I have with all this is that we had 1 viewer and we put him on the show. So now who's going to watch?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of what I have to figure out logistically. Someday we'll get this out to the masses and we'll see how they respond to it. But now that we have 3 people, that's people that we can all share it with. So you can multiply that reach by at least 3 and go from there. So I'm going to admit this at first, and Dave knows this. My clock management in the past for this show has been horrible. I'm like the quarterback of the 2-minute drill that's just sitting there in the huddle as the minutes clock down. It keeps going, it keeps going. So this year I'm trying something a little bit different. I'm going to try a different format here. What we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about last year in our records, which will probably mess up the time management as usual, as I've always done. But the other thing we're going to do is we're going to knock down through all the divisions. We're going to go AL West first, AL Central, NL West. Then we're going to go to Shane's beloved NL Central, Dave's beloved NL East, and my beloved AL East to finish things off. A little bit of bias here. So that's what we're going to do. First thing, though, that I wanted to show is we have to demonstrate the product and what we're actually selling here. And all 3 of us have had winning records the last 2 years because, like I said, of Shane's bookkeeping, we are all holding strong above 500 here. And that's what you want if you're going to bet on these games and listen to a couple of wonderful baseball minds like the 3 of us. Shane, you've been 24-18 over the last 2 years. 6-3 with your best bets. The amazing part of this, Dave Brown, 32-28, but 8-1 on best bets the last 2 years. He was 5-0 last year, just red hot on that. Last year, a little bit rough for me. I was 14-16, 31-29 overall, 5-4 my best bets. I was 3-1 the previous year. So that's just a look at what everyone's doing. And the other thing that I wanted to do, I'll ask you first, Shane, because I don't know if you remember that you actually did this last year. You picked the Braves to win the World Series. I was looking back at the notes. Not only did you pick the Braves to win the World Series, but you had them as an under. And they did. They finished under on their number, but they won the World Series. We just have to take a look into the mind of what would produce that kind of prediction.
Well, I think that's one of those, a broken clock is right twice a day. And I've always been a big believer in baseball that the teams that come in that aren't the heavy favorites are the ones that I kind of like to keep an eye on. And that's just the way things kind of fell with the Braves last year. That's probably my favorite thing about baseball. And a little bit the same with hockey is that once you get in the postseason, it's a hot pitcher. You know, it's just catching fire at the right time. And I don't think that will be replicated this year, but every now and again, it's nice to have one of those to hang your hat on.
Well, don't let the fans in on the secret, because I think they're waiting for you to pick another World Series winner here.
The secret sauce is Rayos. That's the secret sauce right there.
A good secret sauce. For Dave, I think his best bet of the last year, to me, he was the only one out of the 3 of us who picked the Giants last year. Their over-under number was 77, and they cranked out 107 wins. I mean, so you clearly knew something we didn't know on opening day last year.
Yes, I have wonderful insight into what's going on in San Francisco. Always have.
The only one that I did well last year, I was scouring, trying to find a bet that I did that you guys did that was a good one. This is a pretty sad one, but this was the one bet I had to go with. You guys, you doubted the Pittsburgh Pirates. You didn't think they would get over 59 wins last year. You know who did think they would? Me. I thought they'd get 60.5, and I believe they got somewhere in the neighborhood of 61 or 62. I was all over that. So go Pirates, go.
Well, they punished me. They did that on the back of the Mets. The Mets had a couple of horrible back-to-back series surrounding the All-Star break against the Pirates. pretty much ended the Mets season. So they punished me for doubting them.
That's right. That's when they came to life, right? They played 2 series and actually beat the Mets. They won like 4 out of 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that now that you mention it.
I have
so
to
that's
think,
just an insight.
I think that our viewership in Pittsburgh is going to go up considerably based on your call last year. I mean, those Pirates fans are excited that there's a believer among us 3.
It's odd that we've picked out the 3 markets to really zone in on here are Pittsburgh, the Bay Area, and we are zoning in on Atlanta. So I don't think it could be any more random in the 3 areas that you picked to appeal to the fans. We've had some bad picks last year. We were all over, except for you, Shane. You did a good job staying away from the Twins. Dave and I were all over that. The other one we all loved was the Diamondbacks. We thought that they would be over 75 wins, and they were awful. So we're not always perfect, but I think we usually do better than most, and have had a lot of good picks last year, and we'll hope to replicate that this year. So you guys ready to get started with this year's divisions here?
Let's jump into it.
Okay, the first one we're going to do is the AL West. And I'm going to give you all 5 here, but we'll repeat them as we go down. So the Angels are 83.5. The Astros are 91.5. The A's are 70.5. Seattle is 83.5. And Texas is 74.5. So Shane, I'm going to have you start off and lead us off with the Angels at 83.5. You got over or under for them?
The Angels are a team every year that it's interesting we're starting here because I don't do well with the Angels in terms of figuring out. I feel like their number is always right around where it's going to be. And I feel as though I buy into the over quite a bit. And then that hasn't happened. I know that last year I finally went with the under, and this year I'm coming back. I think Vegas is fooling people. And I think that people that have been burnt with the Angels before are going to hit on the under, and I'm going to go with the over. I'm not sold on this division as much as in previous years. And I kind of feel like not only could the Angels hit the over, but I think that they got a really good chance to make the postseason.
Dave, one of your favorite Mets pitchers now on the Angels, Noah Syndergaard. Obviously Shohei Ohtani, everyone loves, watching him go both hitter and pitcher. And we've talked about this in years past. This lineup usually seems to add a fun name every year, although this year they did. So it's kind of interesting to see. So what do you think with the Angels coming up this year?
My rule of thumb is always Angels under. They're always a disappointment. They're always a 77, 79 win team. And if they're counting on Noah Syndergaard right after Tommy John surgery as their number 2 starter, they didn't do enough this offseason.
The other interesting one, Michael Lorenzen, who I believe is another one of those players who can hit and pitch. Obviously doesn't do it in the same way that Ohtani does. And they actually have some good young players. I'm in the same boat as you, though. Like, I just don't trust the Angels. Maybe it's because Albert Pujols is maybe his contract up is kind of a renewal, and they'll actually be a little bit better without some of the high expectations that his contracts and some of the other big ones brought. I'm going to go under on this as well. I'm going to start with you, Dave, for the Astros. Astros are 91.5.
They will go over because Shane just informed me that he's not high on the division. So the division probably isn't that hot. So someone's got to win these games, and it's probably going to be them.
The Astros for me, I have to, it's tough because 91.5 is a lot, but I don't love the division either. I'm interested to see what we get out of Justin Verlander this year. Like, is he going to be good again, or is he just going to kind of be an older pitcher and just try to fill a space? The lineup is still really good, but they've lost Correa from this past year, and the year before they lost Springer. So it's less of like a lineup full of names, but it still is a really good lineup. I agree. I'm going to have to go over just because of the division, but it's going to be pretty tight. What do you think, Shane?
This is very concerning to me that we are literally 2 teams deep, and I am going against both of you on both of those. This is either going to play out terribly for me over the course of the next hour, or I'm going to hit the jackpot. And I don't like betting against 2 all-stars. So I'm taking Houston on the under. Last year, my Astros over was one of my best bets, and I thought that was a pretty easy play. This one, not so much. I just think that Correa being gone is going to have an effect. And to your point, Steve, I'm not thinking we're going to get a vintage Verlander. for the Astros this year. And if they don't have that, I mean, I think that their number is pretty close, but I'm going to go with the under.
This is a perfect next team because this is one of my favorite teams. I always bet the over on this team, the Oakland Athletics. They don't ever let me down. They're old reliable. You just bet on the over and you go with them. But this year, they really lost a lot from last year. You're looking at this. I mean, they won 86 games this year. They're over under 70.5 this year. They just have traded a lot away. They're kind of hitting that restart button. I feel like Billy Beane does this once every like 4 or 5 years just to kind of refresh, flush everything out and try to kind of get things going again. And I look at this lineup and it feels like I think some guys will surprise, but I just don't see anything that scares me about this lineup. And I'm actually going to pick under for the A's. Usually I like them, but 70.5, I'm going to go under because like we said, I don't love this division this year. Shane, who do you think about the A's?
This is one of probably my 2 organizational plays, and Oakland being one and San Francisco being the other, in that I just don't see any value in fading Billy Beane at 70.5. I just think these guys will play hard even if they're not great. I feel like they will find a way, even if they're not very good this year, to not be pathetic. I'd put them around 73, 74, and it wouldn't surprise me if early on in the season they're hanging around before they fade in the end. And I'm taking over 70.5. I think that they'll get the most out of this roster and compete long enough to hit that over mark of 70.5.
Yeah, I'm going over too.
I think I'm going against them this time. What do you think, Dave?
I'm going over also. I think they'll win 71 games, but I think they're going to do it in the opposite way. I think they're going to start off real slow and then come together second half of the season and pull off some wins late.
This is a team that's tortured Dave and I throughout the years, especially Dave. The Seattle Mariners. They're just really hard. It feels like to get a beat on what they're doing. How many games do you guys think they won last year offhand?
Oh, I think they won like 90 games last year.
That's perfect. They did win 90 games last year. It's hard to remember that. They were so good last year comparably. And I knew that, but I didn't really think about it until I opened the book and started looking at these, at the win totals again. So Seattle's 83.5. Shane, I'll start off with you. What do you think about the Mariners' chances this year?
I tell you what, this is a play that I'm pretty confident on. I think we're getting really good value on the under with Seattle based on, I'm always a big fan of, you get a Seattle team that really, I think overachieved last year. So now I think people are going to look at the fact that, wow, this is going to be a new trend. Seattle's going in the right direction. And I look at that more as a 1-year deal. I think for them to go from, 90 wins and do that again is an unlikely expectation. I know that the 83.5 number that's a pretty good drop, almost 7 games for a team that was pretty competitive last year, but I just don't see it. I really think Seattle under 83.5 is the play.
Dave, you're 0-2 in the last 2 years of this team. What do you think?
Yeah, I used to be so over, and then they burned me, so I went under. But I agree. They're not going to win 90 games again, but they're not going to go as low as 83. I'm going over, slightly over.
Yeah, this is a really tough one because I feel like they're sitting in that range of like 81 to 86 wins. Like they're not going to drop off to the point that they're not going to be 500, but I agree with Shane, like 90 wins, they just caught fire to get to that spot. The one thing is they did sign Robbie Ray. Obviously they're bringing a Cy Young Award winner in from last year, which is weird to say that because he only won 13 games, but obviously wins don't matter anymore. It's a lineup that's got some interesting young players, but nobody who really jumps off the page at you. I think I am going to go over as well, but just slightly. This is going to be one of those ones that we're going to be sitting there in the last week of the season going, come on, Mariners, you got to win 5 games in the last week for me. Come on. But I'm going to go over, and I will sweat that out the last week of the season. The next one is Texas Rangers, 74.5, and I'll start with Dave.
This one is a trap. This one's a trap because they did so much in this offseason to make you think that they're going to be good, but I think they're going to fall flat, much in the way that the Padres did that 1 year that they binged and then they purged. I'm going under on the Rangers.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, although I really do like some of the signings, and they were so terrible last year that it really doesn't feel like they have any pressure on them. The challenge for me here is when I look at this, I just feel, I agree with you. It feels like it's a trap. There's a lot of I mean, but they signed Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, and John Gray. Like, they have to be at least a pretty solid team, I would think. So I'm going to go over, even knowing that it's a trap. I'm going to choose to fall into the trap, and I will pick the Rangers. But I can guarantee you they won't be one of my best bets at the end of this. Shane?
This is a trap that I absolutely love, and I'm going to agree with Dave. It is a trap because I think when people look and say a team that won 60 last year now has an over-under of 74.5, but I always think that 60 is skewed because that's so under what this team probably can do. That 74.5 to me, I always kind of go back to basing it off the 81 mark for who's going to be 500. And with that much talent to ask me to get to 75 wins, I think is that's one I'm willing to take. I'm with you in terms of I'll take the bait on this one and see what we have, but I think the talent is going to get this team over 74.5.
Okay, so we both fallen for the trap. We'll mark that down and note that at the end of the year.
Dave is guaranteed to win this one without doubt.
Okay, we'll head to the next division. And already we jump out with a team that they look unfamiliar because they have a different name, the Cleveland Guardians. It makes me think of Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't even watch Guardians of the Galaxy, but there's just nothing else that I can think of. It's an interesting one, and I guess I'll start off with this one since it's my turn around on the order. This is, I mean, I felt like they struggled last year, but I looked and they won 80 games. They're over under 76.5. And the last 2 years I've been 0-2 on them. So I'm probably the wrong person to actually pick this in the right way. But I just look at the lineup. It gets kind of weak after you get through the middle of it. But you've got Jose Ramirez and Franmil Reyes. Straw I like at the top. And then they got a bunch of young guys at the bottom of the lineup that I think to be okay. And the one guy who, if he recovers, Shane Bieber, should be pretty good. I like this team, but it scares me off a little bit because I like some other teams in this division too. 76.5. I feel like it's going to be right around there, and I'm going to go slight under. Shane, what do you think on this team?
There are teams that I like to take because I think the organization is well run and you can always get value. And then there's some teams that are just pathetic that you can take the under every year. This is one of my trend picks in that Cleveland being at 76.5, they've been over 500 for 9 straight seasons. And I'm willing to just roll with that trend until I get burnt. So to get to over 76.5 with a team that's, had a winning record for 9 straight years, I'll go with Cleveland in the over.
Dave, what do you think?
It's a tough one because I have to think of them as the Indians to make this because the Guardians don't make sense to me. I don't know how the Guardians play. I know how the Indians play. Oh, wow, it's hard. I'm going over.
Over, okay. The next team we have is the Kansas City Royals. They're at 74.5. 174 last year. I think we all hit the over on this team last year, and they barely got there. I guess I'll start off with you, Shane. What do you feel? How do you feel like the Royals will do this year?
This has to be one of my least confident picks of this entire Major League Baseball entire spectrum. 74 wins last year. They're basically asking us, are they a half game better this year? To your point, Steve, I think this is one that's going to come down to the final 2 series of the season and will be a coin flip. I'll take that I'm going to say they're better than they were last year. I'll take the over on Kansas City.
I'm going to go with the over as well. I actually look at this lineup, and I like this lineup. I mean, Whit Merrifield is better than people think. They've got guys in the middle of the lineup who hit for power. Salvador Perez had one of the best offensive years I've seen for a catcher in a long time last year.
Yeah, that's why I'm confused that Shane would think that they'd be just as good. That you think he's going to do that again?
But then they have Bobby Witt Jr. coming up. Bobby Witt Jr. is supposed to be the next superstar, and he's looking great. My favorite thing about this team is that Zach Greinke has gone all the way around the world in his career, and he has landed right back where he started here with the Royals. I believe that's where he was. I believe he's been with the Royals. So I just kind of find that interesting. I like this team. I'm actually going to go over with the Royals. I think they can actually win like 77 games, I want to say. So I'll go with that. Dave, I'm going to send it to you.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Greinke is great. He'll give you 4 innings every week. Wonderful. I'm going under.
Going under. Okay. Dave, I will start you with the next team. The Detroit Tigers. And this team was an interesting team last year. They killed all three of us. We had them pegged as under, I think it was like 68.5 last year. They ripped off 77 wins. They were a pretty good team last year. And this goes back to my rule of like, okay, when you look at a division, there's going to be a couple teams that are really good, a couple teams that are going to disappoint. And then you got to pick kind of the one in between. What do you think about this Tigers team at 77.5 this year?
Oh, that's that same old question. Are they half a game better than they were last year? I think they overachieved last year. Did they make enough improvements? I'm going to say under.
Under. Shane, what do you think about this team?
Well, considering the fact that we've got the White Sox and the Twins ahead of them, who will obviously be better, and that I've taken the Cleveland over and the Kansas City over, by process of elimination, there's no real way I could take the Detroit over. So I'm going to say it just seems 77.5 seems high to me for this Detroit team. I'm taking under.
This was another one of those teams that had a good year and went out and signed a few guys. Javier Baez, your guy, Shane. He's on the team now in the 3 spot at shortstop. Eduardo Rodriguez, former Orioles farmhand, who is solid for the Red Sox. The one thing I really like about this team, they have Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal, who are 2 young and up-and-coming pitchers. Also, Michael Pineda, for what you want to take, is pitching for this team. I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm going to go under as well. I think because I picked the Royals, and Dave knows I always fall down on this logic, because I picked the Royals, and because, like you said, Shane, Minnesota and Chicago's in this division, I can't do anything but go under. I'm going to go under on this one. Next up, we're going to go with the Minnesota Twins, and I am the wrong person to be starting off picking on this team because last year they were a best bet for me, and they were awful. They won 73 games last year, and that surprised me. I thought they won less than that. They were so bad. They must have actually started playing okay at some point in August or September just to get to that point because they were brutal. But I look at this lineup, and it's a very good lineup, and I'm going to sound like an idiot when I say this. Byron Buxton, one of these years, he has to be a little bit healthy. And I think that he's going to be one of those guys, and I did this in one of my fantasy leagues, so I'm doubling down on it. I think Byron Buxton stays healthier than usual, has a big year, and I think a lot of these other guys hit around him. The other thing is, this is an interesting pitching staff. Sonny Gray they traded for, and Joe Ryan is a good young pitcher that I like as well. They are 81.5 over under. And because I've got some of these other teams in under, I'm going to go over with the Twins here. Shane, I'll go to you for the next one.
I think of all the teams in MLB with the over-unders, this is the line that I just can't understand. I mean, it seems as though there's a ton of positive momentum for the Twins. I mean, people are excited. They're making some moves. To have them sitting at 81.5, it's either the Vegas's biggest trap or it's a Vegas giveaway. And I got to be honest with you, it's another one I take the bait. 81.5. All they have to do is be a little bit better than 500. Detroit, Cleveland, and Kansas City, I think the Twins can get fat off of them and get over 500. I'll take the over.
What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I'm going the over also. By the same logic of the Tigers. They overachieved last year. They're not going to do it again. The Twins way underachieved. Like I still don't know how they were so bad last year. So I'm taking the over.
For 2 straight, we finally agreed, all 3 of us. That was the first time we've all agreed on an over for the day. So we'll mark that one down. There's actually a lot of differences in the first few picks. Last one in this division, the Chicago White Sox. White Sox at 91.5. And I'm going to start off with Shane.
I think a lot went right for the White Sox last year. And of course, they didn't really get pushed too hard by anybody else in the division. And they ended up with 93 wins. I'm just looking at the rest of the division, and I've got 3 overs and 1 under for the other 4 teams that they're competing against. So to try to do the same thing and get around 93, I don't see it. I'm going to take under 91.5.
Dave, what do you think?
I'm taking under also. This is going to be a division that's won by 88 games.
That's a great point by Dave. That's a really good point.
Can I let you in on a little secret? Last year, we all picked Chicago White Sox under. And you know what? This year, we're all going to pick Chicago White Sox under. I'm going under. This is an awesome team. I actually think they could be pretty good. But I agree with what you guys are saying. 91 and a half, it's a lot to win 91 games. And I look around the AL East and I look at the AL West, and I mean, we guess we didn't say the AL West was all that good, but I look around and I think this is like, to me, like somewhere between an 87 and a 90 win team. I think they fall just short. So I'm going to go under. So we're going to leave the American League now. We've covered two of those divisions. We're going to head to the National League West. This, Dave, is where you did some of your greatest work last year. And where all of us did some of our worst work last year. And we're going to start off with some of our worst work. The Arizona Diamondbacks. We all had over. They were somewhere in the 70s last year. You know how many games the Arizona Diamondbacks won?
58?
Less.
56?
They won 52.
Whoa.
52.
And on the final day of the season, they lost to allow them to fall into a tiebreaker for the Baltimore Orioles, which the Orioles got the #1 pick. They lost on the last day. It was saved. The Orioles won and they lost, or whatever it was, to get to the point where they were all tied. So anyways, Diamondbacks at 66 and a half is their over under this year. Dave, do you want to start us off on this one?
66 and a half. Last year you said they won 52. Under.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have to agree. I know it was such a bad, this is one of those, everything went wrong for them last year. So something you would think would go right for them this year. Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, and Luke Weaver, actually not a bad middle part of the rotation. Madison Bumgarner is an ace, though. I think his best days are behind him. And I look at this lineup, and I just don't see much. So I'm going to go under as well. Shane?
I actually kind of like the middle of the rotation that you referenced, Steve, and I'm with you. You know, I don't think we're getting the best Mad Bum anymore, but I think he'll be effective enough to be serviceable. I think, and I may get laughed out of the room on this one, I think they're the best roster of the sub 70 win teams. I actually, when I see a total that goes from a team that won 52 all the way up to 66 and a half, it just makes me skeptical that there's going to be a lot of people taking the under. And I think Vegas knows something. I kind of like the over on this one. And I think Arizona I think they may actually get up to 69, 70 wins.
It's a good point in the sense that, you start looking at teams that it's not going to be that hard just to get to 70. I mean, you're still going to be 22 games under 500 if you get to 70 wins. So if you start hunting and pecking for 2 or 3 of those teams that can get to just that, getting over 66 and a half isn't hard. I just don't love the lineup, but I agree. There's definitely some potential for this team to do that.
And they had some long, terrible losing streaks where, they were losing to teams that were just about as bad as they were and couldn't catch a break. I think if they can just kind of hang around a little bit, they can get over 66 and a half.
As an Orioles fan, it was impossible for me to fathom that any team was as bad as the Orioles were last year. When I looked up in the last day of the season and saw them at the same record, it's just like, that went really bad. So our next team, I guess I'll start off with this. I'm a terrible person to start off with it, but the LA Dodgers, and this has been one of those teams that's been just incredible. Since 2013, they've won at least 93 games every single year, except for obviously the 2020 year where we had a shortened year. And in that year, they had an over 700 winning percentage and would have been on pace to win 116 games. So they're pretty good. In 2017, 2019, and 2021, they went over 100 games. I am sick of being burned by the Dodgers and picking the under because I think the over-under is too high. It's 97 and a half. Yes, that's way too high. Yes, every year I say this, this team can't do that. That's too many games. I'm going over. I'm done being made to look the fool by the Dodgers. I'm going to go to you, Shin, but I'm going over on this.
You pretty much stole my notes for this. Every year, I think the Dodgers under is such a smart play. I think that I'm way ahead of the curve in terms of they've got all these great players, but it's going to go wrong somewhere and they're not going to hit it. I mean, I'm taking the over here to your point because I can't keep doing unders with these guys. And when you end up posting 106 wins, when someone else in your division posts 107, I mean, I'm pretty much done going against you. I think the Dodgers actually will get the over on this one.
You two almost talked me into the over. But and I know that I've always been under on the Dodgers, except I think last year was the first time I ever said over, and it was right. Does your data bear that out? Yeah. But I think I'm going back to under. And I'll tell you, it's a reasonable reason that I don't think they have the pitching depth that they used to.
That could be true. I mean, they are leaning on Andrew Haney, Tony Gosselin. So those first three, Buehler, and I don't know what Kershaw is going to give. That's a big question mark. And Urias, but they always have a good bullpen, and their lineup is so good. Yeah, but that's a good point. And just to tie a bow on this, they won 106 games. Shane and I both bet the under last year. You bet the over, and that's it. They were. You know what their over under was last year? 102.5. And they
was it really?
Yes. I mean, it's just incredible. So
and I said over.
Shane and I both saw this. We're done. I'm done. I'm done trying to go under on them. I'm done on that. So. And I know, Dave, we did it a bunch of times before that too, where we're like, this is the year they don't do it, and they always did it. So next one that we're going to go to, this was your triumphant mark. So I'm going to let you start off, Dave. I'm going a little bit out of order here, but the San Francisco Giants, I have to give this one to you first. You were the brilliant mastermind who said they were going to go over 77 wins. They had 107 wins last year. This year, 85.5. Will they take a 22.5? No, probably not 22.5, but will they take a 23 game step back? Or is this Giants team, as Shane has said, an organizational pick where you just can't go against them?
What's the number? 85?
85.5.
85.5? Well, I like the idea of them winning 85, but I'll give them 86. I'll go over.
Shane?
Nothing does my heart more good than knowing I'm on the same side as Dave in the NL West. I'm with them on the over as well. Like I said, it's a great organization to go from, over 100 wins. All they have to do this year is get to 85.5. I'll take that gladly.
This is another one where I actually think that the under is a good chance of happening here. It just feels like everything went right for them. They're like lucky talisman Buster Posey is no longer there. He's retired. Maybe some of that aura goes off. But again, I got burnt too bad last year and just got stomped. So I give up, Giants. I'm going over. And that will make for the interesting transition to the next team. And Shane, I'll let you start off on this one. San Diego Padres, 88.5.
Yeah, last year I was very confident in the Padres under. That was one of my best bets. Just kind of seemed like it was too much hype for a team, and the Dodgers and Giants obviously helped me out in getting that Padres under to cash. I'm going to go the other way this year. I think that they'll be better. I kind of believe that. I think now they'll find a way to respond, and to go from 79 wins up to 88.5. San Francisco is going to come down. They're going to be nowhere as talented as they were last year, and I think San Diego picks up some of those wins that San Francisco gives away. I'll take the over.
Dave?
I do like Bob Melvin, but I don't know. 88 seems high. I'm going to go under.
I think if you're picking the over on this team, you're thinking that the pitching staff's going to make a big jump forward. Yu Darvish, you're hoping that he's going to really have some of the great years that he's had in the past. Musgrove, Blake Snell's another one. Like, he didn't have a great year last year. You're hoping that those guys get back to form. Because if they don't, it's hard to see them winning that many games. I'm going to go under. I like the Padres. I agree with you, Shane. I think this is a team that's going to bounce back. And well, they don't need to bounce back. They had a decent year last year. But I think they're going to be pretty good. It is just hard for me to get to 88.5 with them. I think they're like an 85 to 90 win team. They could get over 88.5, but I'm going to go under on this one. The last team, Shane, this was one of your triumphant picks. This was a really good pick under the radar last year. I'll let you start off with it, even though it's going out of order. You had the Rockies as a best bet last year, and you nailed it. Both of us picked under. I don't think a lot of people thought the Rockies would even be a decent team last year. 74 wins, and this year they're at 68.5. A little bit of a curveball thrown there, no pun intended. But what do you think for the Rockies?
Yeah, I will say this. They had 74 wins last year, and now they're down to 68.5. And this is probably one of the bottom three teams for me. Nothing excites me about the Rockies. I don't get excited about their addition of Chris Bryant. I don't think this team is very good, and I'm taking the under. I don't think this team is going to do much in the NL West, and they're my only underplay in that division.
I kind of feel that way too. I like Ryan McMahon as a good young hitter, but everybody else feels like a hitter was pretty good, that if this team existed 3 years ago, they would be lighting the world on fire with their offense. Charlie Blackmon, CJ Cron, Chris Bryant, Randall Grichuk. Those guys were all really good 3 or 4 years ago. They're not terrible now, but they're not what they once were. I'm going to go under on here as well, because pitching, I just never know what to expect on that ballpark. So yeah, I'm taking under as well. What do you think, Dave?
I'm going over. I'm surprised that you're both going under. 68. That's nothing.
So this is you're using.
They're gonna beat the Diamondbacks a few times, and they're gonna take some wins away from the Padres to get me that under.
I think they'll
steal a few from the Dodgers to get me that under. Yeah, I'm counting on the Rockies.
This is your pick basically along the same lines of what Shane said for the Diamondbacks. You know, like a team that you think is a good enough roster to just get to 70 wins. That's all they need to do.
Yeah, I like that Marquez guy. That pitcher, he looks good.
Yeah, he's solid. I mean, Freeland can be okay. Gomber can be okay. I don't know about anything else, but yeah, we'll see what they do. They could be decent. So we're going to head to your home, Shane, the NL Central, where your beloved Chicago Cubs play. I think we're going to save the best our three teams for last, so I won't have you pick the Cubs in this round. We'll do that at the end. But we'll start off with the Brewers. The Brewers are at 88.5. And I'll have Dave start off with that. They won 95 last year, 88.5 for the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, they're a good team. They're going over.
Yeah, I think I probably have to agree with you. I just love the pitching on this team. I just remember looking up last year, and Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns, for people who aren't like big baseball fans, for casual baseball fans, you don't really know who those guys are. That's got to be one of the top 3 1-2 punches in the league. So I agree. I'm going to go over on the Brewers for this one. Shane?
I kind of have a feeling that the Brewers and the Cardinals may swap this year. And I'll get to that Cardinals play here in a little bit. But if that's the case, I kind of like Milwaukee to end up with St. Louis's number and St. Louis to end up with Milwaukee. Last year, I thought the Brewers over was a really good play to make, and that one ended up hitting. It's not a best bet by any stretch of the imagination, but I kind of feel as though Milwaukee may fall off a little bit, and I'm going to take the under for them on this one.
Well, you know this division better than anyone out of this group, at least. So the next team, this is that you talked about organizational plays earlier in this. St. Louis Cardinals, I just pencil them in every year. They're over. I've missed a couple times with them, but usually I feel pretty good about it. Not only that, but I just looking at this team, it feels like there's just a lot of good young players starting to kind of come into their own. And I'm always amazed at the player development of the Cardinals. They don't always have top 100 guys, but by the time these guys get to the majors, guys like Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carson, Tommy Edman, like they're good players and they end up like being the same as the guys who they replaced. I like the Cardinals. The one thing that I'm a little bit worried about is Jack Flaherty, who is that's another really underrated pitcher in all baseball, but his injury, I mean, that could be an injury that keeps him out for a while, and that could be tough for them to replace. But again, when you go for organizational plays, you know that it's a team that's going to figure out a way to replace injuries and stuff like that. So I'm going to go over with the Cardinals. Shane?
What's the number?
I'm sorry, 84.5.
84.5. Yeah, I think you're right on the money there, Steve. I mean, organizational plays in this is really important. But the other thing that I always try to look at in terms of some over-unders on teams that I think are pretty tight on the lines is defense. And I think St. Louis year in and year out is one of the better defensive teams in all of baseball. And like I said, I would have put their number at about 86.5, 87. So to get them at 84.5 when I'm not sure what we get from Chicago, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh, I think this is a nice play to make. And I don't think you can go wrong with over 84.5 on St. Louis.
Yeah, this one seems too easy. 84.5 is nothing.
Yeah. Well, I know we've talked about this every year since we've done this. I feel like we always pick St. Louis. It's like you just put them in and say, go ahead, surprise me if you're not going to be good because you're good every year.
But you're not even asking them to be good. You're asking them to be pretty average.
Yeah, pretty solid. You're right. You're right about that. We're going to skip over the Cubs. We'll come back to them. We're going to go to my triumphant team. I guess I'll start off since they were my triumphant team last year, the Pittsburgh Pirates. I feel like this team is the only team, and at some point I will say something good about the Orioles in this podcast, but I feel like the Pirates and the Orioles are the two poster children for what just happened in the lockout. That players are just mad that there are certain teams that don't try, and you look at the rosters, and the Pirates and the Orioles, they kind of jump out at you as teams that don't try. They have low payrolls, and you just go, yeah, are you really trying with some of these players? But I will say the Pirates do have some good young players who are starting to come up, Brian Hayes. They do have some decent pitching. Mitch Keller jumps out, JT Brubaker. But I've already picked two teams over. I last year is a little magical because their over-under is 59. This year we're expecting 65.5 out of them. And for a team that just isn't actively trying to add players to win, I'm going to have to go under for these guys. Dave?
Yeah, I'm looking at their roster right now. And that rotation. They got Jose Quintana?
Yeah. I was one of Shane's favorites from back in the Cubs days.
Yeah, that's weird. Anyway, but I may change my mind. I'm going under. They stink.
I guess the fact that they actually got Quintana, does that prove or not prove my theory on they're not trying to win? I don't know.
Both. Yeah.
Both. Yeah.
I'm going to say after what happened last year, there is no chance in the world that with all of these Pittsburgh fans watching this show right now, we're going to let them go 0 for 3 and have everybody pick an under. I love the Pirates and over 65.5, if nothing more because they deserve it from this podcast. And they're not very good. And you're right. They probably don't always put their best foot forward, but I have to think some of these guys on the team are getting a little bit better to get 6 more wins, 5 more wins. Yeah, I'll do it. Let's go Pirates.
Well, you've just made the city of Pittsburgh very happy, and we'll keep them on for another year.
What are you going to do? You're going to lose Ben Roethlisberger and have all 3 of us take the under? That'd be devastating.
Well, they also, Mitch Trubisky's there, so I don't know what that means. Are they trying to win? I'm not sure either.
He is the Jose Quintana of NFL players.
The last one, and this is a team that's tripped me up. This was one of those teams that at the very end of the year, they caught fire to just knock me out of what was a best bet for me under the Cincinnati Reds. They won 83 games last year.
I loved them last year. I loved that pick last year.
Yeah, but
were they one of my best bets?
You didn't have it. No.
Should have been.
Yeah. Do you mean over or under?
Over. I picked over, didn't I?
Yeah, I think you did, and they hit over like the last game of the season. So
did they? They were doing really well. I guess they hit a cold streak, but they were doing really well for a while. I like that team last year. I like the team last year.
Well, I'll let you start off with them then.
What's the number? Because
they're at 74.5 this year. So this is kind of one of those tricks. Like, do you think that they're going to take a step back, or are they good enough to just win 75 games?
They're definitely going to take a step back. They stripped that team. And it's kind of tragic when they did the poor Joey Votto. They're all by himself now. 75. I'm going under.
Shane, what do you think for this team?
Yeah, I'm with Dave. I think this is a bare bones team. And I mean, Milwaukee and St. Louis are both going to compete around the 87, 88 mark for wins. Obviously, I think Pittsburgh's going to be a little better, that they could steal a few from Cincinnati. So it kind of comes down to what Chicago's going to do. And I think Chicago will be better than the Reds. So I'm going to take the under too. I don't think they have the weapons to make any sort of push toward 81 wins or to get to 500.
It's weird. They stripped down this team, but they still have a lot of good young players on this team. Jonathan India, Hunter Green's supposed to be an up and coming pitcher. Colin Moran. I don't know, think he's that young, but they have some guys on this team who could be good. Tyler Stevenson, I think, is another young catcher. But again, I agree. I'm going to have to agree. I'm going to have to go under, even though they burned me on that last year. This feels like a team. I think they win anywhere from 72 to 77 games. But I feel like when you look at rosters like this and young rosters, I'd be more apt to go with the lower end of what I'm thinking than the higher end. So I'm going to go under as well. Now we're going to get to Dave's area of expertise, the National League East, where his beloved New York Metropolitans play. And we'll start off. I'm going to start you off in this, Shane, because this is your triumphant pick from last year, the Hotlanta Braves. They won the World Series last year. They won 88 games. I think they were like a 91.5 over-under last year. So they went under by a few. You picked them under, but you also picked them to win the World Series, as we mentioned at the top of this. What's your thoughts on the Braves this year?
I think that there is going to be a lot of pressure on the Braves coming from some of the other teams in the division. Obviously, we know, and it'll be coming up here soon, the Mets and what they can do with this starting pitching. But I still think the Braves are pretty consistent. Miami, Washington, Philadelphia, still kind of that triumvirate of what are we going to get. I think Atlanta's becoming a consistent team again, over 90.5. I'm going to take that.
Dave?
90.5. Oh. I'm going to go under.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go just slightly bit under. And I think the one thing that's going to push it from like them being a 92 to 93 win team to like 87, 88, the Ronald Acuna, just the fact that he's still kind of banged up and he'll probably be back, I think, later in the year. I mean, maybe even not that. I don't think it's going to be that long that he's going to be out, but he's just got to get back to where he was. I think that's going to take a month or two for that to happen. When he gets back, I agree with you, Shane. They're going to be a consistent team. I like them. I really like Charlie Morton, Max Fried. They have a good pitching staff. And it's not even that highly hyped of a pitching staff, but it's pretty good. I'm going to go under, but just barely. I really like it.
Yeah, barely. Yeah, they're like an 89, 88, 87 win team.
Yeah, so that's where I stay, but I think it's going to be pretty close. Miami Marlins, 76.5. I'm going to start off with you, Dave.
They're so interesting because they have such great young pitching and they have nothing in that lineup. It is like a 1-0 game. 76.5. I think they'll overachieve a little bit. I think they'll be over. I thought they were going to overachieve a little bit last year after that playoff run or playoff appearance the year before, and I was wrong. But I think this year they take that little mini step.
Shane?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite plays of the whole deal. I think they are young, starting pitching on the come. I think that this Vegas number reflects a team that you typically look at and say, oh, they're going to be terrible. Let's pound the under. I think Miami could really be a pretty strong team this year and hang around until, mid-August. I like Miami a lot. I'll take the over 76.5, even though they were sitting on 67 wins last year. I think that reflects that Vegas sees something here, and I'm with them. I think that they've got a chance to be really strong, especially with their pitching.
Two things that I'm going to mention with this team, and I'm going over too. The lineup's a little better this year. They signed Soler. They signed Avisel Garcia. Those guys aren't all-stars. They're not, star players, but they're solid power hitters that can fill in the middle of the lineup. So you add that with the good young pitching that they have, and then I'll get to this later. But I also think looking at the rest of the division, there's one black hole in this division that I think allows the Marlins to get to 77 or 78 in wins. And I'm going to transition right into that team next because we're going to skip over the Mets, but I'm going to go over as well. And that will lead me right to my transition, right into the next thing. The Nationals. I'm not a big guy in relating spring training to the regular season, but I don't know if either of you have watched what the Nationals are doing in spring training right now. They're pathetic. They're 1-10 right now. They just gave up 29 or 26 runs yesterday. And I just look at this team, and there are some really good players in this team. Don't get me wrong. And obviously Juan Soto is one of the best players in all of baseball. It just feels like a bunch of guys who are kind of on the downturn, along with a couple guys who just aren't ready yet. The Nationals are 71.5. I've picked over the last 2 years with them, and I've been under. And last year, they just fell apart. 65 wins for the Nationals. I think they'll be a little bit better. But, I mean, what's the reason for Strasburg to come back and be healthy right now? They're not that good. You know, you look at the rest of the pitching staff. Scherzer has obviously been gone now for a while. I don't like this team. I'm going under. Shane?
I think you've completely thrown me off here, because after hearing that little soliloquy, I'm not feeling very confident about my over 71.5 picks at all. Obviously, I have not been following the preseason as closely as you have, and what you've just referenced to me is not exciting at all when you're taking a team to hit over, but they were a best bet that I lost last year, taking the Nats over, and I guess I'll go back to the well again, even though following up what you just said is very painful, probably more gut than anything, but I'll go Nationals over 71.5.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm going to go under. They seem primed to be the whipping boy. Is that appropriate to say? They seem primed to be the team that other teams beat.
You know, and I mean, it is true. Like, I mean, I look, and Nelson Cruz was a signing right before the season, and the Nationals always try. It's one of the things I'm jealous of as an Orioles fan. Even when they're not very good, they do always try to put a decent team on the field. And Nelson Cruz, to me, is proof of that. Like, you're not even going to be that good this year, and you go out and you sign Nelson Cruz. I do give them credit for that. And that could, like you said, Jay, I could get them to 73, 74 wins along with some of the other guys they have.
There is going to come a time where Nelson Cruz stops hitting. It's going to happen at some point.
Is it going to happen before he turns 65, or is he Tom Brady? The last team that we have, the Philadelphia Phillies. Dave, I'll let you start off with them. Their over-under is 85.5.
They're a scary team. That lineup is very scary, but I'm not so hot on you know, aside from Zach Wheeler, their pitching is, but that lineup is so imposing with Harper and Schwarber and Realmuto. When you were going over our records and Shane was 24-18 last year, my first thought was that's going to be like the typical Phillies score, because they're going to score a lot of runs, but they're going to give up a lot in that bandbox. But God, Schwarber in that, what was the number?
85.5. They won 82 last year.
Yeah, they'll win 82 again. Under.
Shane?
Yeah, Philadelphia seems to me to be the team that thinks that they're up there with Atlanta and the Mets, but I just find the Braves and the Mets to be actual teams that will be super competitive. I mean, the Mets they're gonna bring it this year. Atlanta's consistent; they're gonna be there. I don't feel like Philadelphia has those guys that get them to that upper level. And I've got overs for Miami and for Washington, so. The thing with Philly and some of the guys that they have in that lineup, the bats can run cold from time to time. And when that happens, you can get on some losing streaks. I'm going to take under 85.5 for the Phillies.
You know, I actually don't mind the rotation, although I think Wheeler is going to be a little banged up to start the year. But Aaron Nola is obviously pretty good. Ranger Suarez was actually one of those pitchers last year that very few people talked about, who had a really good year.
Yeah,
and
I just don't buy it. I don't buy Ranger Suarez.
What's that?
I don't buy Ranger Suarez. I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it was a small sample size. That's true, but he was really good in that small sample size. And Kyle Gibson's the other one who's interesting to me, because everyone thinks this is just a mediocre, not very good pitcher, but he's one of those guys who eats innings and seems to pitch okay and have good stretches during the year. That being said, their bullpen has always scared me. They have Corey Knebel this year, who's actually a pretty good closer and probably better than what they've had in the past. But the one thing that Shane said that I agree with completely is, what do these guys do with the Braves and Mets in their division and a Marlins team that I think is going to be better than people think? So I'm going to go under on this as well.
And I also think there's something off about Bryce Harper, where he doesn't help teams get to the playoffs. I think there's something rotten about Bryce Harper.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought he was a little bit overrated in that respect too, but he puts up such good numbers. So
yeah. I love it. I love watching him play. I think he's a great player, but there's something like there's something to the fact that he left and then the Nationals won the World Series.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I agree with you there. That's true. We're going to start off in my favorite divisions. Well, I don't really like the division, but my team happens to play in it. I don't like anyone else in it. But we're going to start off with we're going to go in the American League East, and we're going to start off with the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are that team that you guys are talking about. They have so many good players. They are so loaded, 92.5 for the Toronto Blue Jays. And I just look at that number, and even though they're probably on paper the best team in this division, and I look at the lineup that's good, I look at the starting pitching that's good. They have one of the best closers. They have pretty good relief pitching. Up and down, it's pretty good. 92.5. They're going to win 90, 91. They're going to be good. The Red Sox are going to be good. Well, I don't know. The Red Sox will be okay. Yankees will be good. I'm going to go under. It's going to be a tad bit under, but I'm not sure I can go with over 92.5 for them. Dave?
I'm going over. I think they will be the team of the AL East. I think, we'll go into the Red Sox and the Yankees later, but then it'll make sense what I'm saying now, but I'm going over.
Shane?
I think Vegas is luring us into believing that they're not going to do it again. And to be honest, I think one of the best value plays for MLB this year is I like the Blue Jays as a World Series play. I just think these guys are kind of really coming into their own as an organization, and it's not a hit or miss thing between the Blue Jays and the Rays anymore. I think the Blue Jays are legitimate, and I think there's pretty good value in over 92.5.
And I'll tell you what else.
Fascinating things about this team.
Unvaccinated players can't play in Canada, so a lot of teams are going to go to the Blue Jays all screwed up.
Yeah, that is definitely a factor that is still in play. That's
insight you don't get from just any baseball podcast, by the way. I mean, Dave Brown, he knows who's getting the jab and who's not. So.
That is under the radar. It is really under the radar. The other thing I find fascinating about this team is Barrios, Gausman, Ryu, and Kikuchi are all high variance pitchers. They could all be awesome. They could all be disappointing. I mean, that's what I find interesting about this team. They all have good stuff. Of course, you know me, Kevin Gausman, like I look at him and I go, how can he be this good? I don't believe it. And he's coming back to the AL East, the scene of the crime. So we'll see what he can do this year going up against all the big bats in that division. He wasn't so great when he did it with the Orioles. I'm not rooting against him, but I am rooting against him. So. We'll go with the next team. And the next team up, one of my favorites. This is another organizational team, the Tampa Bay Rays. And I'll start off with you, Shane. They're 89.5 over under.
Yeah, I don't see them getting to 100 wins like they did last year, but again, I kind of put Toronto and Tampa in that same category. And to get Tampa at 89.5, I know there will be, a little bit of fall off from what they were able to accomplish in 2021, but I don't know. They just seem to always find a way to do it. And I thought this number might actually be in the 90s. I'll take 89.5. I'll go with the over on this one too.
I was shocked that I saw 89.5. They never get this much respect. And that's why this scares me a little bit. But I go back to what you said. And honestly, I think this team is actually hitting a really good point where all their young players are kind of maturing at the same time. We got a glimpse at Wander Franco coming up. There's like 3 or 4 other super prospects coming up. All the pitchers except for Corey Kluber and Ryan Yarbrough are kind of good young guys who have a chance to really jump off. And they are so good at just playing the numbers and just wearing teams out during a long season. They have those games where they throw 5 guys and they all throw well. And I mean, they just always seem to push the right buttons as it goes along. So I'm going to go over as well. What do you think, Dave?
I'm going under, but I'm really saying that they're going to win 89 games.
Yeah. So you're saying they're going to be good, but it's 89.
Yeah.
89.5 is a lot. It's the most that I think I can remember them getting. And I think they may have been 90 a few years ago, but they usually are in the mid to low 80s when it comes to this team. So the next one's the Boston Red Sox, 85.5. And I'll start off with you, Dave, even though we just ended with you.
The Red Sox, and maybe it's just in my mind, I feel like they alternate good and bad seasons, and it's time for them to have a bad season. So I'm going under.
Shane?
I think it's funny that Dave said that because that was exactly the reason that I took them as the over this year. I went under last year. They seem like an interchanging team. And I feel as though their number is right about where it should be. I think they get to 86, 87. I'll take the over for Boston.
I choked on this so bad last year because I think I even said this to Dave during the podcast. I love the Red Sox 80.5 last year. It was one of those, everything had gone wrong during the COVID year, and I knew they were going to bust out and everything was going to go right. And it did last year. They won 92 games. You're right, Shane, this settles right about where they probably belong, 85.5. I'm going to go slightly over for them because I just think they've got an organization now that's trying to kind of do it the way the Rays are, only they actually have some money to put behind it. And I don't like the pitching staff is really what worries me. It's not a very good starting pitching staff, but I do like what they've done in a lot of other places. I think they're like an 87 win team. So I'm going to go over for them. Next up, I don't know why they are, but they're my kryptonite. I hate this team. I hate picking them. The New York Yankees. I'm 0-2 the last 2 years. You guys are 2-0. You've played off the public and that they always overhype this team. You guys have slammed the under the last 2 years. I've bought into the hype. I think I'm done buying into the hype. I don't love this pitching staff. Although if Severino can actually be healthy, I think that makes them a big step up. What I do like in this team is the lineup. I think they finally started, at least in the bottom half of the lineup, stop getting 9 guys who hit 30 home runs and strike out all the time. That is just a dumb way to build a team. It can work for the regular season. It never works in the postseason. Then I look at the guys like, Aaron Hicks and Kiner Falefa, who's at their shortstop position now. They actually have a couple guys who can do other things. But 91.5 still seems like a lot to me. I think this is like an 88, 89 win team. So I'm going to go under here. Dave?
Oh, yeah, I'm totally going under. That 91.5 is too high. I don't love this team, but they're not. But they're never going to be a disaster. So you're right. It's an 88, 87, 88 win team under.
Shane?
Competitive division. I look for the Yankees to break down at some point during the season, and they're another one of those teams, along with the Cubs, Yankees, Mets, that the public just likes to hammer and over. I'm going to keep riding unders with the Yankees until I lose, so put me down for under 91.5.
Okay, well, now we've reached the part of the program where we all get to talk about our favorite teams. And Shane, we're going to start off with your team, the Chicago Cubs. So we've talked about the NL Central, the Brewers and the Cardinals, the Pittsburgh Pirates and Reds, kind of that high variance, low variance team. Chicago Cubs 75.5. Talk to us about what you think the Cubs might bring into this season.
I really don't have a great feel for this team in terms of hope. I know that's what they're trying to sell us on right now. And I think a lot of things would really have to go well for this team to gel and be competitive. I don't think they're going to be competitive in the division. They're not going to hang around with Milwaukee. They're not going to hang around with St. Louis. Will they be ahead of the Reds and the Pirates? Likely, but they're 75.5. I actually think that number is too high. I look at their lineup, and when you consider what they've had in the past with some all-stars, superstars, we're getting back to the Cubs that aren't going to be competitive now again. We've had the run of success where it was playoffs every year, and now we're seeing that we're falling off. And, does Suzuki excite me? Not really. I look at the lineup. We've had Ian Happ. We know what he is. We know what Jason Hayward is, and that's nothing to write home about. I just don't see the people in the lineup. I mean, a lot of things would have to go right for this Cubs team. And I like Nico Horner. I like what he did last year. Patrick Wisdom did some nice things down the stretch. But when you play that out over a 162-game season, I think it's too big of an ask. I would love to say the Cubs are going to hang around with the Cardinals and the Brewers, but not only will they not compete for the division, they're not going to get to 75.5 wins. I'm taking the under.
Dave, building off on this, talk to us a little bit about Marcus Stroman. You had his experience the last couple of years.
One thing. I do want to jump in really quickly before Dave on Marcus Stroman. When I'm already reading that he wants to go play for the Giants and he's giving interviews saying, wow, the Giants made a tremendous offer to me, and I hope down the line I end up playing there. If I wasn't convinced on under 75.5 before, Marcus Stroman not having thrown a regular season pitch for the Cubs, already talking about the Giants, too much for me.
Is he really? He's such a talker, and tweeter, and And I feel like the Mets fans gave him such a hard time because of that. But now he wore me down also. He talks too much. And and a lot of the Mets fans and a lot of the chatter about it, and I always thought it was a little unfair, is about how arrogant he is and how showy he is. But you know what? He is. Shut up. Pitch. And I'm not. Yeah, so he really turned me off during the whole free agency period. And the fact that he's saying that about the Giants while he's just got to the Cubs, that's ridiculous. He had a good year last year. He's solid. Solid. All that to say, I think they're going to go over, but not by much. But I'm picking over.
Yeah, this is interesting because Shane, you gave us a really good insight on the Cubs. And the one thing I actually kind of like is I think they actually have a decent, it's not great, but their pitching staff to me, it's passable. Like it's a decent pitching staff with Hendricks, Stroman. Smiley's just one of those guys who you don't know what he's going to do. He may be awful or he could actually have a pretty good year. And Wade Miley's another one of those guys. Wade Miley, he could win like 12 games, be like a mid-high threes guy, or he could have a 5.80 ERA and just be brutal. You just don't know what you're going to get with them. I actually like some of the guys you talked about, and Schwindel's another one. I didn't really know who a lot of the guys were, and some of them may not have those types of seasons ever again, but it felt like with Horner, Schwindel, and Wisdom, you had some interesting players at the end of last year. It doesn't sound like from your thought process that they're going to build off that much. I'm going to go over slightly because I think this Cubs team, they feel like, I've said this a bunch of times, they feel like they could win 70 games. They feel like they could win 76, 77 games. I'm going to go for them to win 76. I'm going to go over on this.
You see, my over, I agree with everything Shane says. He's exactly right. My over it has nothing to do with the Cubs. My over is because of the Pirates and the Reds.
That's fair. Yeah.
Good point.
Well, now we'll get to your team, Dave, the New York Mets. And last year you begged off of the Mets. You thought they were a little bit overhyped. We all liked the Lindor trade, and that was terrible for the beginning of the season. Obviously, it's not a bad trade overall, but just didn't go well last year. 90.5 for the Mets. So talk us through what you think they will bring to the table and how they can do this year.
Well, you see, the Met fan in me, the Charlie Brown kicking the football Met fan in me wants to go under, but to take myself out of that mindset, I think they have enough to get 90 wins because of Chris Bassett. I think Chris Bassett as your number 3 starter is pretty darn impressive. I worry about DeGrom's health, but he's supposed to be healthy. And he can opt out after this year, so will be highly motivated to pitch really well. Scherzer is a bulldog. I have always liked Scherzer. Hated that he was on the Nationals because he's such a fun pitcher to watch. And he's old, so I worry about his health. But I don't want to worry about health, so I won't worry about health. Their lineup, I think everyone last year had a down year. That's never going to happen again. So at least 1 or 2 of them will have rebound years. They're all not going to be cold for the second year in a row. So I do think that, what's the number? 90.5?
90.5. Yep.
Yeah. Yes, they should get there. This team is built to get there. So I will pick based on that they will get there.
Well, you've been 2-0 on them the last 2 years, so it gives Shane and I something to feed off of here. And I actually am going to agree with you. I look at what Shane said with a few teams here, these big markets, they always are so overblown. The Mets, when people think they're going to be good, they're always overrated and overplayed in these. But I really do. I think like if this was 2 wins higher, I would beg off and go under. 90.5, like 91 wins feels gettable with this team. And I think especially like you said, with the 1-2 of Scherzer, DeGrom, now those guys could break down and we could be relying on other guys midway through the season. But I like this team enough. I'm going to go over on them. Shane?
I really love the Mets lineup 2 through 5. I mean, this is a team, if you're a Mets fan like Dave, this is a fun team to watch. I mean, this is going to be a really special season, I think, for the Mets. But as you always like to do, Steve, after pumping them up like that, I'm going to turn the other way and say, I really see them having pitching breakdowns. I don't buy into DeGrom staying healthy for the whole season. If he was healthy the whole year, I'd have the number at 94.5, 95. I just don't think that happens. I think that they're a team. They're my injury team this year during the regular season. I think they're going to have some injuries that hold them back. And I just don't want to make the assumption that Scherzer and DeGrom are just going to cruise all the way through the regular season. It's definitely not in my top plays, but I'll go under 90.5 for the New York Mets.
One of these years, this is going to be a fun segment for me, but I don't know why I end off. I should have gone before you guys talking about the Orioles. The Orioles are 62.5 this year over under. Last year, they won 52 games. Their big offseason acquisition, Jordan Lyles, is their second pitcher in their rotation now, someone to pitch past John Means. One of the things I do like is, Cedric Mullins became the first 30-30 Oriole ever. First 30-30 Oriole. And I had a great segment planned for you guys, which this would be me killing the clock, and I could go on for 25 minutes on the history of 30-30 guys. Dave, just to let you know quickly, did you know the Mets are one of only two teams to have two 30-30 players in the same season?
Was it Darryl Strawberry and Howard Johnson?
It was indeed. Shane,
I did not know they were the only ones, though. I did not know.
There's one other team, and I'm trying to remember them offhand. Oh, it was the Colorado Rockies. Ellis Burks and Dante Bichette did it in 1996. So I did some pretty deep research on this. Shane, your favorite player, Sammy Sosa, he had a couple of those seasons for the Chicago Cubs. There's a lot of fun stats that I could have gone to town with. The other fun stat is, although Cedric Mullins is the first 30-30 Oriole, the Orioles were actually the first franchise to have a 30-30 player. Ken Williams went 30-30 in 1922. First guy ever to do it. So there you go. I just dropped some knowledge, and that was me wasting a little bit of time so I didn't have to fill it talking about this Orioles roster. But I am excited about Mullins. He's going to take a step back. Ryan Mountcastle had a great rookie season. He probably should have gotten more consideration for Rookie of the Year. They have some solid players. And really my favorite part about the Orioles this year, this long, grueling process of rebuilding, finally, some of their guys are going to come up this year. Adley Rutschman will be up this year. Hopefully Garrison Rodriguez will, DL Hall. These guys are all top 100 prospects. I expect them to be decent and to start bringing this team in the right direction. Unfortunately, I don't think Adley Rutschman will be up earlier, but I don't think a lot of these guys will be up till about August or September. And I think that's maybe going to give the Orioles a little jolt at the end of the year. 62.5 is a really low number. But I do think I'm still not going to go over. I think this is like a 60 to 61 win team. I just want them to not lose 100 games, which is pretty much what 62.5 is giving you. But I'm going to go under, unfortunately, and I'll let Dave have the next comment on them.
Well, they can win 10 games more than they did last year and still be under, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the under.
Shane?
I'm going to say this. The first team that I ever rooted against in a World Series were the 82 Cardinals. I wanted the Brewers to beat them so badly because I can't stand the Cardinals. The first team in a World Series that I cheered my tail off for were the 83 Orioles. And I'm not saying this team is the 83 Orioles. I mean, Mike Bodeker's not walking through that door. Rick Dempsey's not walking through that door. But I always think 52 wins last year is so incredibly low that I think this Baltimore team is going to be a little bit better. I like the young talent that might come up during the season. 62.5, I say we go for it. I'm going to take the over with the Orioles, kind of like with our friends in Pittsburgh. I know there are a lot of people in Baltimore watching this, and we got to give them something. I'm taking the over.
Well, you've always been a Mike Bodeker fan from back in his Iowa days.
Love it.
So we understand that part.
The pride of Norway, Iowa, right there, buddy.
I think, Shane, the 83 Orioles in their current state could beat the current day Orioles.
That's certainly a possibility.
I appreciate that you saved that line till the best save the best for last, right?
Cal Ripken might walk through that door in that case. Yeah. So here's where we go. I haven't slowed this down very well. I'm still doing a bad 2-minute drill here, but we got two more things here. And the next one is 5 best bets. We'll go one at a time here for each of us. And since I'm struggling to start off with mine, and since Dave was 8-1 in the last 2 years, I'm going to let him lead off and see if I can get a little bit off of his draft and see if I can get some momentum.
So I just tell you one of my best bets?
Hey, we'll just go one by one. You give one, Shane gives one, I give one. We'll just keep going.
Okay, because this is the first time this year that I've been writing them down as I've been making them. So I actually have the list of my best bets. And my first one is Oakland.
Okay. Oakland under. Oh, you have Oakland over, right?
Did I say over?
Yeah.
I did?
I think you did. And maybe, did you say under?
I don't remember. Was I supposed to keep track?
I have over for you right now.
Then I said over. Okay. And I thought it was one of my best bets.
This is how you get these best bets from Dave Brown at 8-1. This is what he gives you. It looks confusing, but it works.
Whatever I said was one of my best bets.
Shane, what's your first best bet?
My first best bet, I'm going to stay in the same division as Dave, and I do believe I know. I took under 83.5 for Seattle. I'm really fond of that bet. I'll take the Mariners to finish under the total.
I'm going to go to a bet that we've done in the past, and it's worked out well for us, and I'm going to keep with it. I'm going to go under, same division, under for the Los Angeles Angels. Shane, I'll have you start off in the next one, and then I'll go and Dave goes, and then I'll switch the order.
Well, if Dave is questioning his first best bet, he can feel confident in knowing that I'm taking Oakland and over 70.5. Just keep riding that Billy Bean wave as long as you can. This pick has done wonders for us, so let's stick with it. Oakland over 70.5.
I am going to go to the let's see here. I don't have a lot of things I like. You know what? We talked about this at the end, and I'm actually going to go, you're going to hate this one, Dave. I'm going to go New York Mets over, star.
Wow. Why would I hate that?
Because I'm probably going to jinx them. You're up. You're up, Dave.
Oh, I am? I'm going with the Kansas City Royals under.
Oh, you did that you went with their over last year as one of your best bets. Okay, now I guess I have to go again. I haven't really thought this through very carefully. Who do I like? I am going to go with I don't really have a good one. Let's go with, I'm going to go with this again and probably get burned again. But I think Shane said this. I don't really understand why the Twins are 81.5. So I'm going to go over. I'll go back to you, Dave.
Dodgers under.
Dodgers under. Go ahead with, you're next, Shane.
I'll stay in the same division as Dave. I'm going to go San Francisco with over 85.5. I love the fact that a team has to get 21 less wins than the previous year to still make the mark. Feels like a good organizational play for a best bet.
I'm going to go with one that we all leaned on for the organizational bet. I'm going Cardinals over. Dave?
I am going Toronto over.
Shane?
Always fun to make your best bet a team that is absolutely miserable. I'm going to take the Diamondbacks over 66.5, and I'm going to have my fingers crossed the entire way.
Dave, we'll go back to you.
I am going to just jinx everything and make the Mets a best bet. Mets over.
Mets over.
Yeah,
Shane,
I was surprised by that 91. That's a doable number. It was very reasonable. I'm going to take it.
Shane, I'll go back to you for your fifth best bet.
Now that Jeter's out of the way, the Marlins won't screw things up anymore. I like the Miami Marlins to hit over 76.5.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to join you on that last one. I like the Marlins as well. I think 76.5 is very gettable for them. So let me make sure I got these right. I have the Angels under, the Twins over, St. Louis over, Minnesota over, Mets over. Shane, you have the A's over. You have the Arizona over, the Giants over. What else?
Seattle under.
Seattle under. Yep. And then you didn't have Minnesota, did you? No. That was
Arizona, San Francisco, Miami, Oakland, and Seattle.
Miami, that's who it was.
Yep.
Okay. And Dave, I have you for A's over, Kansas City under, LA under, Toronto over, and Mets over.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last thing, and then we'll let everyone go. Division winners, playoffs, World Series. Division winners, I'll start off. I'm going to go in the AL West, go with the predictable, the Astros. AL Central, I don't know why, homer in me, and it's my home, but they're not my team. I'll go with the Twins. I'm going to pick them in an upset to win the AL Central. AL West, I'm sorry, we already did the AL West. AL East, I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Rays. NL East, I'm going to go New York Mets. NL Central, I'm going to go St. Louis Cardinals. And in the NL West, I'm going to go LA Dodgers.
You want me?
What are your divisional picks?
Me?
Yeah.
Me. In the AL East, I'm going to take Toronto. In the AL Central, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to go with the Twins. For some reason, I just have a funny feeling they're going to catch fire. I will take the Los Angeles Angels in the West in an upset. I think we'll get Houston falling off a little bit, and the Angels are going to catch fire. In the NL East, I will take the Atlanta Braves. In the NL Central, I'm going to ride with the St. Louis Cardinals. And in the NL West, there's really no other option than the LA Dodgers.
Dave?
I'm going with Toronto. I'm joining you with Minnesota. And I'm sticking with the Houston Astros in the West. In the NL, I'm going with the Mets. I'm going with the Brewers. And I'm taking the Dodgers.
Okay. 2 wild cards for each league, and then we'll go to the World Series winners. 2 wild cards, I guess, for me. I am going to go with, let's see here. I am going to go, the Yankees, they always seem to end up here, so I'm going to pick them as one of the wild cards. Sorry, no. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to go Toronto, and I'm going to go, Toronto and New York are mine. Dave?
We're just doing the American League?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, wild cards for the NL. Sorry, I missed that. Let me do, I'm going to go with the Padres, and I am going to go with the Braves.
Okay, so
not you, Dave.
In the American League, I'm going to go with the Rays and White Sox.
Okay.
In the National League, I'm going to go with the Braves and Cardinals.
Okay. Shane?
In the American League, I will go with the Rays and the Yankees. And in the National League, I'm going to go with Dave's New York Mets. And I will also go with the San Diego Padres.
Okay. World Series picks. Shane, I'll start off with you, and then I'll go, and then Dave goes.
I did not do this just to do it again. It's just the way it all works out. From the National League, I am taking the New York Mets to not win the division, but and this is why I pointed it out. I was talking about regular season injuries. When they get to the postseason, I think that the Mets could find a way to make sure that DeGrom is ready once it gets to the postseason. I would not want to face that 1-2 punch of Scherzer and DeGrom. I think the Mets will roll through the NL and get to the World Series, where they will face the Toronto Blue Jays. Unfortunately, I have the Blue Jays in 7.
Dave, I'm going to change my mind. You make the next pick, and so I can wait and see what everyone else does.
I am so we're picking who wins also, and how many games?
Yeah, it doesn't do how many games. You can, if you want.
I'm going to have the Brewers beat the Blue Jays in the World Series.
Brewers, Blue Jays. I'm kind of going to go Shane's path here. My NL team, San Diego Padres. I'm just going to throw them in there, and I'm going to pick the Tampa Bay Rays over the Padres. It's random, but they're both very good teams, and I'm going with it. All right. Well, that's it. We will keep track of it. I guess one more time, I'm just going to run through all the picks just so we have them, and then we'll wrap it up. I know this always takes the lengthy amount of time, but you guys can tell me if I have any of this wrong. In the AL West, Angels, Shane has over, me and Dave have under. Astros, Shane has under, me and Dave over. Both Shane and Dave have over for the A's. I have under. You've made the A's best bets, both of you. Mariners, Shane, you have under. That's one of your best bets. We both have over. Texas Rangers, Shane and I have over. Dave has under. Cleveland, Shane and Dave have over. I have under. Kansas City, Dave and I have over. Or no, Shane and I have over. Dave has under. Detroit, Shane has under. Dave has under. I have under as well. Minnesota, we all have over. I have that as a best bet. White Sox, we all have under for another time in a row, so we'll get burnt by them again. Diamondbacks, Shane, you have over as a best bet. Dave and I have under. Dodgers, over. Dave has under. That's a best bet for him. I have over as well. We all have over for the Giants. Shane, that's one of your best bets. San Diego, Shane, you have over. Dave and I have under. Colorado, Shane has under. I have under. Dave has over. Milwaukee, under for Shane, over for me and Dave. St. Louis, over for all of us. That's one of my best bets. Chicago, under for Shane, over for Steve and Dave. We're probably going to be wrong about that. Pittsburgh, Shane, you went over. I went under this year, and so did Dave. Cincinnati, we all went under. Atlanta, Shane, you went over. We went under. Dave and I. Miami, all of us went over. Shane and I have that as best bet. Mets, Shane, you went under. Dave and I went over. We both have that as best bets. Washington, Shane went over. We both went under, Dave and I. Philadelphia, we all went under. Toronto, Dave and Shane went over. I have under. Baltimore, you went over. Shane, Dave and I went under. Tampa Bay, Shane and me went over. Dave, you went under. Boston, me and Shane went over. Dave, you went under. Yankees, under for everybody. That's pretty exciting. I should just sit here and read lists. Very thrilling time for everybody. That's where we're at. Thanks for joining us. And we will be posting this, and we'll look forward to a good, positive year of betting for anyone. Anyone else want to say anything to wrap up?
If you aren't making money on this show, you're not making money, period. I mean, there were so many winners given out between the three of us that if you've got any children, the college fund is taken care of.
Yeah, I think if you put money on every single thing that every one of us has said, you'll probably end up in the loony bin.
Well, just remember, you've got 8-1, 6-3, 5-4. If you combine that together, and I'm doing quick math in my head, that is 19-8 between the three of us, I believe. So you're getting pretty good picks from us, mostly from Dave, who went 8-1. But that's
you're getting very good picks, many of which contradict each other. Good luck.
70% winners. I did some quick math. 70% winners.
That's pretty good. Best bets, follow them. That's all we can say, everybody. Thanks again, guys. And we will do this again next year and be tracking these picks throughout the year. Stay tuned for the draft podcast in a couple of months. We'll talk to you later. All right. Stop recording.
Well done.
Yes.